This is 10 iconic British TV series of the 1970s. Where better to start our nostalgic journey than with a series that is often cited as being the greatest television drama ever made, Claudius. Broadcast over 12 episodes on BBC Two between September and December 1976, this epic series told the life story of Claudius as narrated by the man himself and his almost accidental rise to the position of Roman Emperor. In the title role, the great Derek Jacobi is nothing less than superb, expertly interpreting the various physical afflictions which plagued the real-life Claudius. He is ably supported by an amazing cast of acting greats, including Sian Phillips, Patrick Stewart, Brian Blessed and John Hurt as a depraved Caligula. Claudius may have been shot entirely in the studio, but this gives the series a more intimate feel, thereby magnifying each dramatic moment. If you were a kid in the 70s like me, then it's likely you wouldn't have seen Claudius at the time, or if you did, you would have probably been bored stiff. However, looking back as an adult, it is easy to appreciate what an incredible production it truly is. And now for something completely different. Yes, from classic drama to classic comedy, it's Monty Python's Flying Circus. Countless comedy shows which followed this landmark sketch series owe a debt to Monty Python's Flying Circus, its influence spreading far and wide. Often described as the Beatles of comedy, the Monty Python team, consisting of John Cleese, Michael Palin, Terry Jones, Eric Idle, Graham Chapman and Terry Gilliam, tore up the comedy rulebook and presented a series which blended traditional comedy with zany surrealism. Sketches would often end abruptly with no punchline in sight. Speaking of Monty Python sketches, I'm sure you all have your own personal favourite. Some of those which have attained legendary status include Nudge Nudge Wink Wink, The Ministry of Silly Walks, The Lumberjack Song and, of course, the Dead Parrot sketch. I'd love to know what your favourites are. Be sure to let me know in the comments. Monty Python's Flying Circus ran for 4 series on BBC One and BBC Two between 1969 and 1974. When children of the 70s look back at their favourite kids' TV shows of the era, Rentaghost is a series that is invariably remembered with much fondness. The series' longevity, running for 9 series between 1976 and 1984, is a testament to how beloved the show was and still is. Written by Bob Block, whose other children's series include Pardon My Genie and Robert's Robots, Rentaghost followed the antics of a group of ghosts who work for a ghost-for-hire company. Initially, there were only 3 ghosts: the recently deceased Fred Mumford, who founded Rentaghost, Victorian gent Hubert Davenport, and, most memorably, medieval jester Timothy Claypole. More characters were added over the years, including Hazel the McWitch, Nadia Popov, and Dobbin the Pantomime Horse. So, just what was it about Rentaghost that captured our imaginations so strongly? Well, the series featured a style of comedy that children found easy to laugh at, and a cast of characters that were distinctive enough for everyone to choose their favourite. Let's not forget that memorable theme tune too. A British and Italian co-production, the 1977 miniseries Jesus of Nazareth remains the very definition of epic. From the generous budget and stunning locations to the hundreds of extras who complement an incredible cast of major stars, everything about Jesus of Nazareth was on a grand scale. Speaking of the main cast, just look at the actors involved and try to think of another television series that has boasted such an amazing array of talent.
Jesus of Nazareth stars Robert Powell as Jesus, with guest stars Anne Bancroft, Ernest Borgnine, Valentina Cortese, James Farentino, James Earl Jones, Stacy Keach, Tony LoBianco, James Mason, Ian McShane, Laurence Olivier, Donald Pleasance, Christopher Plummer, Anthony Quinn, Fernando Rey, Rod Steiger, Peter Ustinov, Michael York, and Olivia Hussey.
When screened in the UK, the 6-hour-plus runtime was split into 2 episodes, with the second of these broadcast on Easter Sunday 1977. The series was a huge success, attracting more than 21 million viewers, and was praised by the majority of critics. Much of the acclaim was reserved for Robert Powell, who gave arguably the performance of his career in the title role. His blue eyes, accentuated by the fact that Powell rarely blinked, draw you to the screen, ensuring that you cannot take your eyes off him. A truly monumental production, Jesus of Nazareth was nominated for 6 BAFTAs, but amazingly didn't win a single one. However, the series did receive an Emmy for Outstanding Special Drama. As one of the most revered period drama series in British television history, it's really quite amazing to think that Upstairs Downstairs was initially conceived as a comedy by actresses Jean Marsh and Eileen Atkins. With a switch of genres to drama and a slight change to the setting, Upstairs Downstairs was first broadcast on ITV in the autumn of 1971, eventually completing a run of 5 series in December 1975. Beginning in the year 1903, the series was set in a large townhouse located in Eaton Place, Belgravia, London, and followed the lives of both the Bellamy family who owned the house and the various servants who worked for them. Many of the most memorable characters from Upstairs Downstairs came from downstairs, including loyal butler Hudson, played by Gordon Jackson, cook Mrs. Bridges, portrayed by Angela Baddeley, and of course head parlourmaid Rose, played by series co-creator Jean Marsh. Upstairs Downstairs was revived by the BBC in 2010, while the original series' influence can be seen in the hit ITV drama Downton Abbey, which featured a very similar premise. While not as iconic as many of the other series featured here, Crown Court is one of those shows that remains firmly lodged in your memory bank. This is particularly true if you were of school age during the series' run in the 1970s. While the series was obviously not aimed at children, its weekday lunchtime broadcast slot meant that younger viewers would often catch an episode while home from school for lunch, or, more often than not, happily sit and watch while off sick from school, preferably with a bowl of chicken soup to hand. While all of the characters in Crown Court were played by actors, the jury was made up of members of the public who, as in real life, would then be asked to give their verdict. This meant that 2 appropriate episode endings would be written and rehearsed to suit the given verdict. Usually, each case would last for 3 episodes broadcast over 3 successive days, thereby hooking you into the story whether you wanted to be hooked or not. Crown Court ran for more than 800 episodes between 1972 and 1984. Although Grange Hill didn't make its debut until 1978 and ran throughout the entirety of the 80s and 90s and most of the 2000s, I've included it in this 70s TV video because of the impact the series had when it first aired. Devised by Phil Redmond, who would later go on to create Brookside, Grange Hill very quickly attracted criticism from some quarters for its gritty portrayal of school life. There was a distinct divide between the people who loved the show and those who hated it. Those against the show were, in the main, parents and grandparents, while children of school age couldn't get enough of the series. The early years of Grange Hill featured many of the characters that we of a certain age remember the most, such as Tucker Jenkins, Benny Green, Alan Humphreys, Tricia Yates and Suzanne Ross. So popular was Todd Carty as Tucker, when he left the series in 1982, he was given his own spin-off, Tucker's Luck, which ran for 3 series between 1983 and 1985. Running for a mightily impressive 30 years, Grange Hill will always be the benchmark against which other TV school dramas are measured. If Grange Hill is the benchmark for school-based dramas, The Sweeney is the ultimate test for gritty detective series. Everything about The Sweeney shouts 1970s, from the iconic theme tune and memorable blue-filtered title sequence to the colourful Cockney vernacular and the cast from that era. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, The Sweeney remains a much-loved series that is still repeated on television today. The Sweeney changed the game as far as British TV police dramas were concerned, bringing a whole new level of gritty realism and violence to proceedings, while adding a welcome dash of humour too. Regan and Carter, played by John Thaw and Dennis Waterman respectively, were as tough as they come, and would happily indulge in a session of heavy drinking before using physical violence to achieve their goal. Dixon of Dock Green it was not. The Sweeney ran for 4 series on ITV between 1975 and 1978. 2 spin-off films, Sweeney and Sweeney 2, were released in 1977 and 1978 respectively. Full of hilarious and inventive slapstick sequences and zany fantastical plots, The Goodies was a landmark 70s comedy on the level of Monty Python. Written by and starring Graham Garden, Bill Oddie and Tim Brooke-Taylor, each episode saw the group offering their services for hire, with the slogan, "We do anything, anytime, anywhere." With this basic plot starter, our heroes would find themselves in increasingly bizarre situations, such as the classic Kitten Kong, where they try to stop a giant rampaging kitten which destroys the post office tower and squashes reporter Michael Aspel under its paw. The brilliant slapstick sequences, often using speeded up footage, hark back to the era of silent film comedy. Indeed, if the Goodies had been around at that time, they would have been hailed as geniuses. Perhaps the continued use of this type of humour was the reason the Goodies were never really afforded the lofty status of the Monty Python team. Nevertheless, the Goodies TV series remained popular throughout the entire 70s decade, running from 1970 to 1982. The trio also had a number of UK chart hits during the 1970s, including The Funky Gibbon in 1974. If you could only use the image of one actor to perfectly encapsulate the decade that was the 1970s, for me it would have to be the late Peter Wyngarde. The look, the style and overall manner simply scream 70s, and it is for that reason that the series Jason King gets a well-deserved place on today's list. First broadcast on ITV in 1971, Jason King was actually a spin-off from the less well-remembered Department S. A former secret investigator, Jason King now works primarily as a novelist who, during the course of various research trips to exotic locations, still finds himself embroiled in exciting adventures.
Peter Wyngarde is Jason King.
Jason King? Well, that's incredible.
His quest for adventure and taste for excitement lead him to beautiful women.
Well, I hope so.
Dangerous criminals.
Do what you're paid to do and shut up.
And exotic locations.
That's why I'm here.
He's an author who creates imaginary stories by solving real-life crimes.
Are you ready, Mr. King?
And he discovers surprise endings he never expected.
He leaves the villa, we must kill him.
He's an expert investigator of a most unusual sort.
You probably knew that already.
Jason King.
In the title role, Peter Wyngarde was the epitome of a 70s dandy and ladies' man, and it was undoubtedly he who made Jason King such a fun romp through the world of 70s glamour.
Well, I hope so.
If you're wondering why there were no sitcoms featured today, don't worry. As the 70s is often referred to as the golden age of television comedy, the many classic sitcoms of the era will feature in a video of their own in the near future. Meanwhile, are there any other British television shows from the 1970s that you think deserve to be featured in a future iconic television video? Do please let me know in the comments.
Well, I hope so.
If you enjoyed today's video, a little click on the like button is always much appreciated. As always, thanks for watching, and do join me next time for more nostalgic goodness.